All right, I'm gonna take the mic off. I'm a little nervous, but you know what? I got this, right? Yeah. So, I'm gonna start off with family. A word with so much potential, but yet lacks so much. And why do I say that? Being a 5-year-old confused in my house, looking at myself in the mirror and saying to myself, why is it that what I'm thinking doesn't reflect what I'm looking at, right? Looking at my parents constantly argue. My mother was always fighting with my father. My father was always fighting with my mother. I remember one day going up to the hallway and looking at them as they fist fight each other, right? And my mom is actually arguing about me because she actually uttered out, I was a big mistake. And I was a mistake because I looked like my father, right? So again, I'm sitting here. I have no one to talk to, no one to speak to. This confused little boy, right? Looking at the mirror. And it came to a point where like my mother and my father no longer could be together. So they actually separated. And I was around 6 years old already, 6, 7 years old when they separated. My father went back to the Bronx to live with whoever he wanted to because he was a gigolo. My mom was, and my grandmother, we all lived together. So I was sitting down and I used to go into the bathroom a lot. And of course, you know what parents think when you're in the bathroom a lot, right? Right? They think you're actually playing with yourself. I wasn't. I was actually looking at myself in the mirror and taking out clothes from the laundry and wrapping it around me and acting like it was a dress and playing with my grandmother's makeup. So that's what I was doing for hours. My mom left to the Dominican Republic, didn't tell me anything. She didn't say goodbye. I woke up one day and I'm asking my grandmother, where's mom? She goes, oh, your mother left the Dominican Republic. You didn't know? I said, no, I didn't. So she technically just left me with my mom. She went to the Dominican Republic over some guy she met, and she was introduced previously to go get married with this guy, right? So now she's coming back. She comes back almost a year later, comes back pregnant. So now she doesn't want me around. So then it starts. I'm getting shipped to my father. My father's family can't stand me because they never liked my mother, right? So of course I was the punching bag between my mother and my father all the time. And yet I'm sitting here so confused with my identity and having no one to run to, right? I remember from the age of 6 years old to like about 10 years old, living with my grandmother and being sexually molested by my uncle through those years. And I'm thinking it's okay. Why? Because I was born different, right? So I'm thinking, okay, it's okay that my uncle's doing this to me. So I left it alone. It continued. I didn't know nothing about the trans life. I didn't know nothing about the LGBT life. My life growing up was very much, I went to church, home, school. And that was my life, my teen years. People ask sometimes, what's your teen years like? I don't know what to tell them because I didn't have one. Once it hit 7 o'clock, I had to be up in my house. If I was going to the store, they were looking out the window to make sure I went to the corner store and back, right? And go figure, growing up, because that was the only way that I was able to leave my house, I went to church. I was an altar boy. I participated in catechism classes. And yet through this, I'm like hiding my identity and being extra feminine, because I remember walking down the streets and someone said hi to me and I went like this and my mother was like, what the hell's your problem? And I said, what are you talking about, Mom? What you mean, what's my problem? She goes, what the hell's your problem? Why are you saying hi like that? Can't you say hi like a man? And I looked at my mom and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because it just came so natural to me, right? Because I was born with the mentality of a woman. Never thought in my life that I was that little boy. So of course, fast forward, my father ended up moving to Boston with his second wife. So my mom was like, okay, so we're gonna send you to your father's because you'll have a better life over there. And you know, your father loves you and you'll be okay, right? Come to find out, she didn't route me around my grandmother, and she actually wanted to get rid of me. So I went to Boston. It was torture. I was I want to say about 13. And my stepmom was the most evil. Everything you heard about stepmoms, that lady, her picture was in the dictionary. Okay, that's it. But I laugh now, but it wasn't easy for me. I remember birthday parties. I remember weddings where I had to be locked up in the room. So I wasn't able to go out and participate with no one. And I'm talking about, this is my father's second marriage. So I went to middle school. Middle school was torture because I was feminine. I never looked masculine. And I remember the boys teasing me, talking about, you know, back then you had to be in the boys' line and the girls' line, right? Horrible. Boys used to sit there and tell me, you're in the wrong line. You belong in the girls' line. And I was like, nah, I'm in the right line, right? So that would be fights and arguments, right? And bullying. So I went through that at my age of 13, 14. Then my father actually got up and left and went to Dominican Republic and left me there with my evil stepmom, okay? And he went to marry his childhood sweetheart in Dominican Republic. So of course, when he called my stepmom, she was upset. Her mom was like, you know, saying every curse in the book. And I was left there behind while my father was in Dominican Republic. He had a couple of businesses, so he came back to New York, sold the businesses, told me, you could come to Dominican Republic once you finish school, so stay here for your semester, for your, you know, throughout the course of middle school. I didn't want to, I cried, I kicked, but he left and left me with my stepmom. And that, when I tell you, was the worst time of my life. One of the worst times of my life. After the semester was over, I actually cried because I wanted to go back to my grandmother. And I was told that my grandmother didn't want me because she felt that I was gonna break up the relationship between her and my grandfather. So this was the lies that was told to me to get me to Dominican Republic. So I ended up going to Dominican Republic. Remember, my father's family didn't like me or liked my mother. So I'm in Dominican Republic. My dad, my 12 uncles, because, you know, we're a big family, including my aunts. And they all sitting there talking about my mom, talking about me, talking about how feminine I am, talking about how they need to take me to a brothel, so that I can sleep with a woman. Now I'm talking about, this is the age of 14, 15, all right, in Dominican Republic. And I was told that my father needed to take me to one of those whorehouses and shove beer down my throat so it could make me more masculine. So I did that. I didn't go to the brothel though. I didn't do, but I was drinking beer. So at the age of 14, 15, I was drinking already. Right? We used to go to my grandmother's house when she was alive from my father's side. You know, it was a thing to do every night. Oh, we're all going to grandma's town, grandma's house. We're all going to hang out there, play dominoes, play things. I would not go because the times I went, I was their punching bag. You notice I was their constant punching bag. Because again, my mom said I looked like my father. My father's family didn't like my mom, and they said I looked like my mom. My father never found out, but my actual sexual relationship was with his father, with his best friend's son. Okay, he took me to the Dominican Republic so that I could try and be more masculine and sleep with women, and I ended up sleeping with his best friend's son. And that went on for like a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. But one day I couldn't take it anymore. I called my grandmother crying. I ran across the street, my father's house, into a payphone. I'm that old. There was payphones back then. No cell phones. So I went to the middle of the streets and I called my grandmother, Podge, and I said, Grandma, I can't take this no more. Either I'm gonna kill myself or you have to come pick me up. So my grandmother actually, a week later, she actually bought a plane ticket and went to pick me up. And she told my father, you know, I'm taking her with me. She's going on vacation. But it was really because I wasn't going back to the Dominican Republic. So I come back. My mom in her third marriage, because remember, when I left, she was on her second. Now my mom's on her third marriage. You know, and she's married to a handicapped guy who's on a wheelchair. And his father-like thinking was acting like I was his nurse, pushing him up the hill, down the hill, up the staircases, down the staircases. You know, basically I was his little maid, right? And it wasn't until I had an argument with my sister that he got up and he punched me. And so I took the broomstick and I beat the shit out of him. I beat the shit out. But you know what? Instead of my mom taking my side, she ended up taking his side. And I'm hearing them in the room arguing about me. So I just got up in the middle of the night and I went to live with my grandmother. I went back to my grandmother. I told my grandmother what happened. My grandmother said, you know what? You're not going back. Fast forward. I'm living with my grandmother. Everything's smooth. I work as a school aide. Still, let's not forget that I'm confused. I'm hiding my identity because I am not this man that everyone sees. I am a woman. So because I couldn't transition properly because my church. Like my mother wanted me to be a priest. My mother wanted me to be a lawyer. My mother wanted me to be everything under the book other than what made me happy. And not to mention, I was so miserable. Like I was so miserable with my life, you know, because I didn't know nothing about the LGBT community at all. I didn't know nothing about the trans world at all, you know, and I'm here as a school aide. Back then, it's not very talked about someone being trans. It wasn't up until like I was 25, around 25 years old, that I said, you know what? Enough is enough. I ended up leaving. But before that, actually, I met a friend of mine who lived in Brooklyn, and they were trans. And so I didn't know. I was like, oh, get out of here. So trans, like, so you was a man? So they were educating me because I didn't know nothing about the trans community. So I would go to Brooklyn. I would dress up in her house, do drag for the weekend, and go back to my grandmother's house as a boy. And I started doing shows, actually. So they took me one day to Crash. I went to Crash and I met Jessica Fox, right? So I was sitting on the side and I'm looking at her perform and I'm seeing the follies and I'm like, wow, this is what I want to be doing someday. I love the attention. I love the spotlight. I love to make a difference. So of course, Jessica Fox, if you know her, she didn't allow no one in the dressing room. She didn't want no one in the dressing room. She didn't care about no one in the dressing room. But for some reason, when I asked to go to the back, she let me in. And it just automatically, I was like, you know what? I want you to take me under your wings and make me your daughter. I want you to be my mom. I want you to be my mentor. And she said, you know what? I've been waiting for this moment. You are my daughter. Okay? And, you know, she was a great mom. We did a lot of things together, you know, but she showed me a lot of ropes. Living on my grandmother, I got to the age where I was like, you know what, enough is enough. That's when I hit 25. I ended up moving out. I said, I'm never gonna leave. I'm never gonna be who I am if I stay here at my grandmother's house. So I got up and I moved out. Moving out with my friend wasn't the best thing to do. I wanted to transition. So I met some other girls and told me, you know what? If you want to transition, you have to prostitute. Because back then we didn't say sex work or we didn't say survival work. We said prostitution, right? So she's telling me, you know what? You'll be over as a woman. I'll get you on hormones and everything, but you know what? They don't give us jobs. They don't take us serious. So the only thing we can do is sell our bodies. So what did I do? I sold my body. I sold my body for many years. And because I was selling my body and I was so miserable, I turned to drugs. And you name it. I did every single drug there was out there except shoot myself. But I did every single drug up there because I was so miserable. But I didn't care. The money was good. I was getting my hormones, you know? So I kept doing it. It wasn't until I met my husband at the time, who thought that showing me love was punching me every day. Okay, to a point where he knocked 3 of my teeth out. Okay, I had lost my job, of course, as a school aide. So I was like, all right, so I lost my apartment. So living with him, we was living in abandoned houses. Okay, so I went from house to house and it was abandoned. And that happened for like about, I want to say 3, 4 years, 5 years, almost 6 years of doing drugs, selling my body, and being in an abusive relationship. And guess what? I couldn't even turn to my family. Why? Because my family wasn't gonna understand. I was never grown up. I never grew up with a sense of family, you know? And because of this, I tried to commit suicide 2 times. All right? I took a bottle of pills of Zoloft that was prescribed to me, and I took all of them. It wasn't one of my friends that stuck his finger down my throat and I actually threw up. But I didn't go to the hospital. I was so beat up so badly one day that I called the cops and I asked the cops. The cops came to the door and told me, you want to press charges? I said, yes. And one of them said, but ain't you a man? Can't you defend yourself? And that just shut me down. That just shut me down completely. And I didn't press charges. I let it go. So because the cops came and they asked me, I got beat up that night again. Because I got beat up, I was getting high, right? I finally was able to leave that relationship, and the way I left that relationship was because I got up in the middle of the night and I ran. My godparents lived 10 blocks down from me, and I actually ran to my godparents' house. And I left everything behind. When I tell you I left everything behind, all I left was when the clothes I had on me, which was pajamas. That's all. So I had to start all over. And everything was okay at my godparents' house for a while, but then, you know, it started getting frustrating because they have 6 kids of their own, and they're taking care of me as well. So it's like 7 kids. So of course it's getting frustrating. And I'm okay because to me, that's a sense of family, right? But to them, it was very much I was their living nanny. So I ended up going to a shelter. I lived 2 years in a shelter. While I was in the shelter, I met someone who was HIV positive. And we had a beautiful friendship at first, and it turned into a relationship. But this person was always nervous to sleep with me or kiss me because, you know, being positive, it was just coming out. People were starting to know about it. So everyone was scared, right? Like this person actually went to his mom's house and he had his own plates set. His mom wouldn't let him even use the bathroom, right? So I ended up performing. I started performing, and the drugs was so there for me. The drugs was so easy for me. The drug dealers were in that dressing room every night, and I was buying the coke, I was buying the crack, I was buying the e-pills, I was popping the mollies, and right there were times that I would get on stage and I couldn't even lip sync because I was so trash. Because I was so miserable. And I honestly, I was just killing myself little by little. That's what I wanted. I didn't have no purpose, no meaning. I didn't have no one to love me. I didn't know who was I or where did I stand in people's lives. So I was just killing myself slowly. One day I was standing in front of Heaven. I don't know if you guys remember the club Heaven, for those that are a little bit around my age. Heaven was the club where actually I got my first break, where I was asked to be one of the main showgirls. I said, fine. And it wasn't until I was outside that I bumped into someone and this person tells me, oh, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm good. Mind you, I'm strung out in front. And he starts telling me about these classes that he's taking. It's an 8 weeks course. They'll help you with your case tag. And I was already saying, maybe this is something that I really want to do. Why not? Why don't I get into this, right? Because I wanted to change my life. I knew my life had meaning. Somehow, somewhere, I was like, I'm meant for something better. I just didn't know what it was. So, of course, I have my mom. I have some friends. Honestly, my friends weren't shit. Okay? They slept with my ex when I was out and about. They would rob from me. They would break my things. They would use my apartment for whatever it was they wanted to. So, of course, I was constantly battling like, okay, I'm definitely alone. I don't have nobody here, right? I would turn to my mom. My mom would be, a mentor, which would be Jessica Fox. She would talk to me. She would let me know. She actually gave me some guidances and stuff like that. And we kept going. So it was when I met this guy in front of Heaven that he told me about this 8-week course. So I said, okay, I'm going to go take this course and see what happens. So I take this course. It's an 8-week course about Hep C, HIV, how to be a case manager, how to be a counselor, how to do testing. Okay. Because at the time I was dating someone who was positive. I said, let me just learn more about this, right? About this epidemic. So I went through the 8 weeks course. I got hired as a peer educator. Being a peer educator was really good, but what happened? I was still living in a shelter and I was still getting high. And there was another trans woman there who wanted my position. Okay, so she ended up telling my supervisor, look at her, she gets high. Look at her. So my supervisor one day looked at me and asked me, are you high? And I was high and I said, no. But he was able to tell. What happened? They let me go. And they let me go right when I was about to get my own apartment from the shelter. That was the job that was gonna help me pay for that apartment. So I ended up losing my job. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was devastated. I ended up going to Bronx Community Pride Center, which is no longer around. But I asked the person who was there, the executive director at the time, I used to do shows for them when they had special events. So I ended up telling her I need a job. She gave me a little reception job. It was pretty cool, I ended up getting my apartment. I started furnishing my apartment. I was still doing a little bit of sex work on the side because now I was like, okay, now this is the time for me to furnish my apartment because, working as a reception wasn't gonna give me enough money. So then what happened is she got caught embezzling and they closed the agency down. And thank God that I ended up at the New York City Anti-Violence Project, where I was there for 7 years. And that's where I got triggered listening to one of my clients' story when they told me they were being molested by their uncle. So all these years, I'm still carrying that. And this is actually the second time that I've actually mentioned it, because the first time I mentioned it to my brother, who's in the audience. Um, 7 years went by. I met someone. Everything was cool. But what happened, this person didn't really like trans women. They liked the men. So they ended up cheating with men and told me one day through a text message, you know, I'm not feeling it anymore, but my boyfriend told me and you can be friends. And I said, you know what? You and your boyfriend can both go to hell because I can care less about this relationship anymore. And so we did. I found good people afterwards, right? I found a good support system. I had lost all total faith in humanity and friendship and family, thinking I was just alone. It was just me in the world. And I started meeting people that actually valued the word friendship and valued the word family. I ended up working for 7 years at AVP. The support system that I've gotten has been amazing. I still speak to my mom every single day. Because of my work at AVP and the support system that I have now, I was able to land a job at City Commission on Human Rights, where I'm like the only trans woman of color right now working for government, right? And of course, I can't end this without really, really saying thank you to my brother Adrian, who's in the audience. When you say that there's no blood is thicker than water, we don't have blood through our veins, but that's all we need. Because that has been my support system. Nick, who's in the audience too. What's up, Nick? But if you didn't hear anything about my story, I would tell you this much. If you have a child, or if you think of adopting or having kids, be there for them. It's okay if they're different. Let them live their life as they go through this fucked up life that we have. That's not easy for none of us. So all I would say is give love, cherish the moment, because you never know whose life you're saving. Thank you.